The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Light came from floating crystals that drifted through the air like slow fireflies. The floor was made of some strange metal that showed your reflection perfectly, like walking on a mirror. Ambassador Elena Vasquez had never felt so small in her entire life. She stood at the center of the hall, wearing her best diplomatic uniform. The dark blue fabric was crisp and clean. Every metal on her chest was polished. But compared to the beings that surrounded her, she felt like a child who had wandered into a room full of giants. The Galaxy Council had 142 member species. They sat in rings that rose up around the central platform like a stadium. Some of them looked almost human. Others were so strange that Elena's mind struggled to understand what she was seeing. There were beings made of living crystal, creatures that seemed to be clouds of glowing gas held together by invisible force. Things with too many eyes, too many limbs, or no visible body at all. These species had ruled the galaxy for 11,000 years. They had ended wars, cured diseases across entire worlds, and built wonders that humans could barely imagine. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. And today, humanity was asking to join them. The human delegation may present their petition, said High Arbiter Veltun. He was the leader of the council, a being made entirely of blue crystal. When he spoke, his whole body vibrated like a tuning fork, and his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Elena stepped forward. Her heart was beating fast, but she kept her voice steady. High Arbiter, honored members of the council, humanity comes before you today in peace and friendship. We have achieved faster than light travel. We have established colonies on 12 worlds. We believe we are ready to take our place among the great species of this galaxy. A murmur ran through the crowd. Elena could not tell if it was approval or amusement. Your species is young, said Velthun. Very young. But youth is not a crime. We will consider your application. First, however, you must demonstrate your capabilities. All member species contribute to the mutual defense of the Concord. Show us your military technology. Elena nodded and looked to her left. Colonel James Okonkwo stepped forward. He was a tall man with dark skin and a shaved head. He had served in Earth's military for 30 years. He had fought in wars and led men into battle. But even he seemed nervous today. I am Colonel James Okonkwo of the United Earth Navy, he said. I will present our defensive capabilities. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the platform. The first showed a human soldier holding a rifle. This is our standard infantry weapon. It uses a chemical propellant to accelerate a metal projectile at high speed. The projectile causes damage through kinetic impact. The murmur in the crowd grew louder. Elena heard sounds that might have been laughter. Okonkwo continued. He showed missiles, tanks, artillery pieces, and warships. He explained how each weapon worked: chemical explosives, metal bullets, nuclear warheads, kinetic bombardment. By the time he finished, the crowd was not even trying to hide their reaction. The laughter echoed through the great hall like thunder. A delegate from the Kreth species rose to speak. The Kreth were tall and thin, with silver skin and forearms. Am I understanding correctly? He asked. Your primary weapons work by burning chemicals and throwing pieces of metal? That is a simplified explanation. But yes, said Okonkwo. His voice was tight. Elena could see the muscles in his jaw working. How wonderfully primitive, said the Kreth delegate. Tell me, do your soldiers also carry sharp sticks? Perhaps some rocks? More laughter. Elena felt her face growing hot. Another delegate spoke. This one was from the Umi, a species that looked like large floating jellyfish. I mean, no offense, but these weapons seem more dangerous to the user than the enemy. Do your soldiers not frequently injure themselves with these explosive chemicals? Our safety protocols are very thorough, said Okonkwo. I'm sure they are, dear primitive friend. I'm sure they are. High Arbiter Velthun raised one crystal in hand, and the chamber fell silent. Perhaps a demonstration of council weaponry would provide useful context, he said. A platform rose from the floor. On it sat a small device, no bigger than a human fist. It was smooth and white, and seemed to glow faintly from within. This is a standard graviton manipulator, said Velthun. It does not throw metal or burn chemicals. It manipulates the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Observe. The device activated. Across the chamber, a target dummy made of solid steel simply crumpled. It collapsed in on itself like a piece of paper being crushed by an invisible hand. In seconds, it was reduced to a ball no bigger than a marble. "Our weapons do not make holes," said Velthun. "They unmake matter itself. They do not rely on crude kinetic force. They rewrite the laws of physics on a local level. Your bullets and bombs are not weapons. They are toys, dangerous toys, perhaps, but toys nonetheless." Elena wanted to argue. She wanted to defend humanity's achievements. But what could she say? They had just watched Council technology crush steel with nothing but gravity. What were bullets compared to that? "We will grant humanity provisional membership in the Galactic Concord," said Velthun. "But you will be classified as a Tier 7 species. You are too primitive to contribute to Concord defense forces. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have developed real technology, we can revisit this classification. Tier 7, the lowest possible rank, equal to species that had just discovered fire." Elena bowed her head. "We are grateful for the opportunity," she managed to say. The session ended. As Elena and Okonkwo walked out of the Great Hall, neither of them spoke. The humiliation was too fresh, too raw. Finally, Okonkwo broke the silence. "They laughed at us," he said. "We came here in good faith, and they laughed at us." "They have weapons that bend gravity," said Elena. "Can you blame them?" "Yes," said Okonkwo. "I can. Because pride comes before a fall. Always. These species have forgotten something important." "What's that?" Okonkwo looked back at the Great Hall, his eyes hard. "They've forgotten that the universe doesn't care how elegant your weapons are. It only cares whether they work." Elena did not have an answer for that. Meanwhile, in a dark room deep beneath the council chamber, a technician studied a transmission that had been intercepted from the edge of known space. It came from the Vorax Dominion, a species that had been exiled 10,000 years ago for their crimes against the galaxy. The message was encrypted, but parts of it were clear. Words like fleet, and ready, and return. The technician flagged the message and sent it to her superiors. They would look at it and decide what to do. 3 days later, the report was filed away and forgotten. The Vorax had been defeated 10,000 years ago. They were no longer a threat. The Council had better things to worry about than ghosts from the past. This would prove to be a terrible mistake. But for now, the Galaxy Council continued as it always had, secure in their power, confident in their technology, certain that nothing in the universe could threaten them, and far away, in the darkness between galaxies, something ancient and angry was waiting. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Concord. Elena Vasquez had returned to Earth to file her reports. Colonel Okonkwo had gone back to his duties, training soldiers and maintaining the fleet that the galaxy considered worthless. Life continued. The stars turned. And then, without warning, everything changed. The first attack came at the Meridian system. It was a peaceful place, home to 3 billion members of the Velketh species. They were artists and musicians, known throughout the galaxy for their beautiful songs. They had no military. They had never needed one. The Concord protected them. The Vorax fleet arrived at dawn. 3,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They were unlike anything the galaxy had seen in 10,000 years. Their ships were not made of metal. They were grown from living tissue, dark and twisted, covered in what looked like scales or shells. They pulsed with a sickly green light, as if something terrible was breathing inside them. The Meridian Defense Station sent out a distress call. Then it sent out a second call. Then it went silent forever. The Concord First Fleet responded within hours. 200 of the finest warships in the galaxy jumped to the Meridian system. These were vessels that had never lost a battle. They carried graviton manipulators, quantum disruptors, and neural pacification fields. Their captains were veterans who had served for centuries. They expected a difficult fight. They did not expect what they found. Admiral Velthessa of the crystalline species commanded the fleet. She was old and experienced. She had fought in 17 conflicts and won them all. When her ships emerged from FTL and saw the Vorax armada, she felt confident. "All ships, engage," she ordered. "Target the lead vessels with graviton batteries." The first fleet opened fire. Invisible waves of gravitational force reached across space toward the Vorax ships. These weapons had crushed steel and broken worlds. Nothing could withstand them. The waves hit the Vorax vessels and did nothing. Admiral Velthessa watched in disbelief. The graviton manipulators simply passed through the enemy ships like light through glass. The Vorax hulls were phase-shifted, existing slightly out of sync with normal space. Gravity could not touch them. "Switch to quantum disruptors," she ordered. The blue beams of the disruptors lanced out across the void. They were designed to tear apart matter at the quantum level, to make molecules forget how to hold together. The beams hit the Vorax ships and scattered harmlessly into space. The organic hulls absorbed and dispersed the quantum energy like sponges soaking up water. "Neural pacification," said Velthessa. Her voice was shaking now. "Full power. All ships." The pacification fields were weapons of last resort. They shut down conscious thought, putting enemies into a permanent sleep. They worked on every known species. The fields washed over the Vorax fleet. Nothing happened. The Vorax were a hive mind, their consciousness distributed across thousands of bodies. There was no central brain to pacify. The fields found nothing to attack. For the first time in 8,000 years, the Galactic Concord faced an enemy that their weapons could not touch. The Vorax returned fire. Their weapons were crude compared to Council technology. Simple plasma cannons, biological missiles that exploded on impact. Nothing elegant or sophisticated, but the Council shields were designed to stop graviton waves and quantum beams. They had no defense against raw heat and physical force. The first fleet died in 19 minutes. 200 ships, 50,000 crew members. Gone. Admiral Velthessa's last transmission reached the Council chamber just before her ship was destroyed. Her crystal body was cracking from the heat. Her voice was full of something no Council species had felt in millennia. "Fear. They are immune," she said. "Our weapons cannot harm them. Nothing we have can stop them. May the stars forgive us. We have forgotten how to fight." The transmission ended. The first fleet was no more. In the following days, the truth became clear. The Vorax had spent 10,000 years in exile, but they had not been idle. They knew they would return one day. They knew they would face Council weapons. So they had changed themselves, generation after generation. They had modified their biology. They had grown hulls that existed between dimensions. They had distributed their minds across entire fleets. They had developed organic armor that absorbed and scattered energy. They had evolved specifically to defeat every weapon the Council possessed. And they had succeeded. 3 border systems fell in the first week, then 5 more. The Council sent fleet after fleet, and fleet after fleet was destroyed. Nothing worked. Graviton manipulators, quantum disruptors, neural fields, atomic destabilizers, dimensional rifts, all useless. The Vorax were not just winning, they were barely even slowing down. High Arbiter Velthun called an emergency session of the Council. The great hall that had once rung with laughter at human weapons was now filled with terror. "We face extinction," said Velthun. His crystal body had lost its shine. He looked old and tired. "In 3 weeks, the Vorax will reach Nexus Prime. When they do, the Galactic Concord will fall. 11,000 years of civilization will end." The delegates sat in stunned silence. These were beings who had thought themselves masters of the universe. Now they faced an enemy they could not fight. "There must be something," said the Krith delegate, the same one who had mocked human weapons 6 months ago. "Some weapon we have not tried." "We have tried everything," said Velthun. "Every weapon in our arsenal, every technology we possess. The Vorax are immune to all of it. Then we are lost." No one argued. No one had hope left. Far from the Council chamber, Colonel James Okonkwo sat in a small room on Earth, watching classified recordings of the battles. The footage had been shared with all member species, even the primitive ones, even humanity. He watched the first fleet die. He watched graviton waves pass through Vorax hulls. He watched quantum beams scatter like broken light. He watched the most advanced weapons in the galaxy fail completely. And then he saw something else. In the chaos of the battle, one Council ship had lost control. Its engines had failed, and it had drifted into a Vorax cruiser. Just a glancing blow. An accident. But the Vorax cruiser had buckled. Okonkwo rewound the footage and watched again. The impact was minor. Just 2 ships brushing against each other. But the Vorax hull had dented. It had cracked. Physical impact. Kinetic force. The one thing no Council species had used in 10,000 years. The Vorax had spent millennia adapting to energy weapons. They had made themselves immune to graviton manipulation and quantum disruption and neural pacification. They had evolved to defeat every sophisticated weapon the galaxy possessed. But no one in the galaxy used kinetic weapons anymore. No one threw metal or used explosives. Such things were primitive. Such things were beneath advanced species. The Vorax had never needed to adapt to kinetic force, because they had never faced it. Okonkwo stood up slowly. His heart was pounding. His hands were trembling. "Oh my God," he whispered. "We can hurt them. We're the only ones who can hurt them." He reached for his communication device and called Ambassador Vasquez. "Elena," he said, "I need you to get me in front of the council, right now. Today. I know how to stop the Vorax." "James, what are you talking about?" "Our weapons," said Okonkwo. "Our primitive, worthless, laughable weapons. They're the only things that can save this galaxy." There was silence on the line. Then Elena spoke again, her voice filled with wonder and dawning hope. "I'll make the call." The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had changed. 6 months ago, it had been filled with light and confidence. Now it felt like a funeral. The floating crystals were dim. The delegates sat in silence, their bodies bent with despair. The mirror floor reflected faces that had forgotten how to hope. Colonel James Okonkwo walked to the central platform. He could feel the eyes of 142 species watching him. Most of them had never paid attention to a human before. Humanity was beneath their notice. Too primitive, too young, too insignificant. But everything was different now. "High Arbiter," said Okonkwo. "Honored delegates. I have studied the battle recordings from the Meridian system and the other engagements. I believe I have found a weakness in the Vorax." A ripple of interest passed through the crowd. The Kreth delegate leaned forward. "Speak, human. What have you found?" Okonkwo activated his holographic display. The recording from the First Fleet's destruction appeared in the air. He zoomed in on the moment when the drifting council ship struck the Vorax cruiser. "Watch carefully," he said. The delegates watched. They saw the collision. They saw the Vorax hull buckle and crack. "Physical impact," said Okonkwo. "Kinetic force. The Vorax are immune to your energy weapons because they evolved to defeat them. But they never evolved to defeat kinetic weapons. Because no one in this galaxy has used kinetic weapons in 10,000 years." Silence. Then the Kreth delegate spoke again. "You cannot be serious. You are suggesting we use your primitive projectile weapons? Your chemicals and metal fragments?" "Yes," said Okonkwo. "That is exactly what I am suggesting." The Umi delegate made a sound of disbelief. "This is desperation speaking. We are not going to throw rocks at an invading armada." "Why not?" asked Okonkwo. "Your graviton manipulators failed. Your quantum disruptors failed. Your neural fields failed. Rocks might actually work." "This is absurd," said another delegate. "We cannot trust the fate of the galaxy to technology that your species used to kill animals for food." "With respect," said Ambassador Elena Vasquez, stepping forward to stand beside Okonkwo. "Your advanced technology has already failed. Our primitive technology has not been tried. What do you have to lose?" High Arbiter Velthun raised his crystalline hand. The chamber fell silent. "The human speaks truth," he said slowly. "Our weapons have failed. We have lost 17 fleets. 43 systems have fallen. The Vorax are 3 weeks from this very world. We have tried everything we know, and nothing has worked." He paused. His crystal body seemed to flicker with internal light. "Perhaps it is time to try something we do not know." The debate that followed was the most heated in council history. Elder species who had not raised their voices in centuries now shouted at each other. Some called Okonkwo a fool. Others called him a liar. Many simply could not accept that their civilization might be saved by the most primitive member of the Concord. "This is humiliating," said the Velketh delegate. "If we win this war with human weapons, we will be the laughingstock of history. If we lose this war," Elena replied, "there will be no history." Hour after hour, the debate continued. Systems fell. Refugees fled. The Vorax advanced. And still the council argued about whether to trust humanity. Finally, Velthun ended the discussion. "We will allow a test," he said. "One human battle group. One contested system. If the humans fail, we will have lost nothing but a few primitive ships. If they succeed, we will reconsider our position." Okonkwo nodded. "We will not fail. You have great confidence for a species that was throwing metal at each other just a century ago. That confidence comes from experience, High Arbiter. Humanity has been fighting since before we could speak. We've been killing each other for 2 million years. We are very, very good at it. Velthun made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then go, human warrior. Show us what 2 million years of violence has taught you. 3 days later, the UEN Defiance emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kethran system. She was a human dreadnought, 300 meters long, bristling with weapons that the galaxy considered toys. Behind her came 12 escort vessels, cruisers and destroyers, armed with railguns and missiles and nuclear warheads. Captain Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Defiance. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes like chips of dark ice. She had served in the United Earth Navy for 20 years. She had fought in 3 colonial wars. She had never lost a battle, but she had also never fought aliens before. "Report," she said. 40 Vorax warships, Captain," said her sensor officer. "They're attacking a refugee convoy. 10 civilian transports carrying approximately 50,000 refugees from the fallen systems." Tanaka watched the display. The Vorax ships were circling the convoy like sharks around wounded prey. They were taking their time, enjoying the hunt. Time until they destroy the convoy. At their current rate of fire, approximately 2 hours. Then we have 2 hours to kill 40 ships. Tanaka turned to her weapons officer. "Load all railgun batteries with tungsten penetrators. Prepare missile tubes 1 through 40 with standard nuclear warheads. Spin up the point defense systems." "Yes, Captain." The bridge crew worked quickly and quietly. They had trained for this moment their entire careers. They knew their weapons were considered primitive. They knew the galaxy was laughing at them. They did not care. "Captain," said the communications officer, "the Vorax are hailing us. They want to know what we are." "What we are?" Their exact words were, "Unknown vessels. Identify yourselves. You carry no weapons. Are you here to surrender?" Tanaka smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "They can't detect our weapons. Their sensors are looking for energy signatures, graviton waves, quantum fluctuations. They're not looking for railguns and missiles. They think we're unarmed, Captain. Then they're about to get a very unpleasant surprise." Tanaka sat down in her command chair. "All ships, battle formation. Prepare to engage on my command." The 13 human vessels spread out in a loose arc. They moved toward the Vorax fleet slowly, as if they were indeed unarmed ships coming to surrender. The Vorax ignored them. 13 small vessels were no threat. The refugee convoy was more interesting. Tanaka watched the range counter decrease. 100,000 kilometers, 50,000, 20,000. Optimal firing range in 30 seconds, Captain. Tanaka opened a channel to her entire battle group. "All hands, this is the captain. In a few moments, we're going to show this galaxy what humans can do. We're going to show them that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. We're going to show them that 2 million years of evolution made us the most dangerous predators in the universe." She paused. On every ship in the battle group, 3,000 humans waited for her command. "Fire at will," said Captain Yuki Tanaka, and the galaxy changed forever. The first railgun slug left the Defiance at 3% of the speed of light. It was a simple thing. Just a bar of tungsten, 2 meters long and half a meter wide. No guidance systems, no warheads, no sophisticated technology. Just metal, moving very fast. The Vorax destroyer never saw it coming. The slug punched through the bow of the ship like a bullet through paper. It entered on one side and exited on the other, leaving a hole the size of a house. The destroyer's internal atmosphere exploded outward in a cloud of freezing gas. Crew members were sucked into the void. Systems failed. Lights flickered and died. The ship did not explode gracefully like in the old stories. It simply broke. It tore itself apart from the inside. Ripped open by the sheer violence of the impact, the Vorax hive mind felt something it had not felt in 10,000 years. Confusion. One of their ships was dying, and they did not understand why. Then the rest of the human fleet opened fire. Railgun slugs crossed the void in streams of silver death, each one hit with the force of a small nuclear bomb. The phase-shifted hulls that had laughed at graviton waves could not stop simple metal moving at relativistic speeds. The organic armor that had absorbed quantum beams was torn apart like wet tissue. Missiles followed the railgun fire. Nuclear warheads detonated against Vorax hulls, and for a moment, new suns bloomed in the darkness of space. The explosions were not elegant, they were not sophisticated, they were raw and brutal, and absolutely devastating. The Vorax had no defense. They had evolved for 10,000 years to defeat energy weapons. They had never imagined that anyone would attack them with something so primitive, so simple, so effective. Captain Tanaka watched the destruction from the bridge of the Defiance. Her face showed no emotion. This was not a moment for celebration. This was work. Target destroyed, reported her weapons officer. Reloading. Next target. Fire when ready. Another slug. Another Vorax ship torn apart. Another ancient horror dying in the cold of space. The Vorax finally understood what was happening. These strange new ships were not unarmed. They were carrying weapons so primitive that Vorax sensors had not recognized them as weapons at all. The hive mind screamed in rage. All 40 ships turned away from the refugee convoy and focused on the human fleet. Plasma cannons charged. Biological missiles launched, but human ships were faster and smaller than Vorax vessels, and human point defense systems had been designed to shoot down missiles and projectiles, because that was what humans expected to face in battle. Thousands of rounds per minute erupted from the human destroyers. Tracer fire lit up space like deadly fireworks. Vorax missiles exploded before they could reach their targets. Plasma bolts missed their marks as human ships danced and weaved through the chaos. Enemy missiles destroyed, reported the defense officer. Point defense holding. Maintain fire, said Tanaka. Don't give them time to think. The battle was brutal. It was ugly. It was everything the elegant Galaxy Council had evolved beyond, and it was working. The Defiance's main railguns fired again and again. Each shot took 30 seconds to reload. Each shot killed a Vorax ship. The escorts added their own fire, smaller railguns and missile salvos that chipped away at the enemy fleet. 10 Vorax ships died in the first 5 minutes. The hive mind felt something new now, something that had been dormant for 10 millennia, suppressed by their absolute confidence in victory. Fear. These small creatures with their primitive weapons were killing them. Actually killing them. The Vorax had swept aside the finest fleets in the galaxy without effort, and now they were dying to hunks of metal. The hive mind ordered a retreat. Half of the remaining ships turned and tried to flee. But human missiles were faster than Vorax engines. Nuclear fire caught them from behind and tore them apart. The other half of the fleet charged forward, trying to close the distance where plasma cannons would be more effective. But closing the distance meant crossing the field of fire. More railgun slugs, more explosions, more death. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, 40 Vorax warships had been reduced to scattered debris. 50,000 refugees had been saved. The human fleet had lost 2 ships, the destroyers Kennedy and Mumbai, with all hands. Captain Tanaka stood in silence for a long moment, honoring the dead. 600 humans had given their lives today. 600 heroes who would never see Earth again, but they had proven something. Something that would change the course of history. Open a channel, said Tanaka. Broadcast on all frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. Channel open, Captain. Tanaka spoke clearly and calmly. She knew that both the Galaxy Council and the Vorax Dominion were listening. This is Captain Yuki Tanaka, of the United Earth Navy vessel Defiance. We have just engaged and destroyed 40 Vorax warships. Our weapons are primitive by galactic standards. We throw metal and we burn chemicals and we create explosions. But today, those primitive weapons did what your advanced technology could not. She paused. To the Vorax Dominion. You spent 10,000 years becoming immune to the weapons of this galaxy. You forgot that there are older ways of fighting. Simpler ways. We have not forgotten. We have been killing since before we learned to speak. We have drowned our own world in blood, time and time again. You think you know war. You do not. You know nothing. Another pause. To the Galaxy Council. You laughed at our weapons. You called us primitive. Perhaps we are. But sometimes primitive is exactly what you need. We have more ships. We have more weapons. We have more humans who are very, very good at killing things. If you want our help, all you have to do is ask. She cut the transmission. On Nexus Prime, High Arbiter Velthun watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. He watched railgun slugs tear through Vorax hulls. He watched nuclear missiles create new stars. He watched the species he had dismissed as primitive savages do what his entire civilization could not. He watched, and he understood. "Contact the human ambassador," he said quietly. "Tell her that the Galaxy Council formally requests humanity's assistance in the war against the Vorax Dominion." His aide hesitated. "High Arbiter, some of the delegates may object. They may feel that asking humans for help is beneath our dignity." Belthune turned to look at his aide. His crystal body flickered with cold light. "Our dignity means nothing if we are dead. Contact the humans. Tell them we need their weapons. Tell them we need their ships. Tell them." He paused, and something that might have been shame passed across his alien features. "Tell them we need them to teach us how to throw rocks again." The aide bowed and left. Belthune turned back to the battle recordings. He watched the Defiance fire again, watched another Vorax ship die, watched the primitive technology he had mocked become the salvation of everything he held dear. "We forgot," he whispered to himself. "We evolved beyond violence, and we forgot. The humans remembered. The humans never stopped. And now they will save us all." He was right. But the war was not over yet. It had only just begun. The news of the Battle of Kethron spread across the galaxy like wildfire. 40 Vorax ships destroyed. 50,000 refugees saved. By humans. By primitives. By the species that threw metal and burned chemicals. On Earth, the reaction was immediate. Every shipyard on the planet shifted to wartime production. Factories that had been building civilian goods began producing railguns and missiles. Training centers that had been winding down suddenly found themselves overwhelmed with volunteers. Humanity had been mocked. Humanity had been humiliated. Now humanity had been proven right, and they were ready to show the galaxy exactly what they could do. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the Galaxy Council once again. But this time, no one was laughing. "The United Earth Navy is prepared to commit our full military strength to the war against the Vorax," she said. "We ask only one thing in return." "Name it," said High Arbiter Velthun. "Full membership in the Galactic Concord. Not Tier 7. Full and equal partnership." There was no debate this time. The vote was unanimous. Over the following months, human ships poured through the jump gates. Dreadnoughts and carriers and battle cruisers, all bristling with weapons the galaxy had considered obsolete. They were joined by council vessels that had been hastily retrofitted with human technology. Elegant ships now carried ugly railgun batteries bolted to their hulls. Ancient diplomatic cruisers had missile pods strapped to their sides. It was not pretty. It was not sophisticated. But it worked. Colonel James Okonkwo was promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command of the combined forces. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UEN Resolution, and looked out at the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. 3,000 ships. Human and alien. Old enemies fighting side by side against a common threat. "Admiral," said his communications officer, "High Arbiter Velthun requests permission to join you on the bridge." Okonkwo raised an eyebrow. "The High Arbiter? Here? He says he wants to witness the end personally." Permission granted. "Show him to the bridge." A few minutes later, Velthun entered. His crystal body had regained some of its shine. He moved slowly, carefully, like someone who was very old and very tired. "Admiral Okonkwo," he said. "Thank you for allowing me to be here." "High Arbiter." Okonkwo nodded respectfully. "You should be on Nexus Prime, where it's safe." "Safe." Velthun made a sound like breaking glass, which might have been a laugh. "Nowhere is safe until the Vorax are defeated, and I could not stay behind while others fight for my people's survival. I needed to see this with my own eyes." He moved to stand beside Okonkwo, looking out at the fleet. "I mocked your weapons," he said quietly. "I called them toys. I called your species primitive. I was a fool." "You were wrong," said Okonkwo. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. A fool cannot learn. You have learned. That makes you wise." Velthun was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "How do you do it? How do you fight so well? Your species is so young. You should be children compared to us." Okonkwo considered the question. "We never stopped fighting," he said finally. "Your species evolved beyond violence thousands of years ago. Ours did not. We kept fighting each other. We kept improving our weapons. We kept learning new ways to kill." He paused. "It's not something we're proud of, but today, it might save the galaxy." A terrible gift, said Veltun. Yes, but a gift nonetheless. The fleet jumped to the Vorax home system. The enemy was waiting for them. 2,000 Vorax warships, the last armada of the Dominion. They had gathered here for a final stand. If they won, they would sweep across the galaxy and destroy everything. If they lost, their species would end. The hive mind screamed defiance across the void. They had conquered. They had evolved. They had spent 10,000 years preparing for this moment. They would not be defeated by primitives, but fear lived in their shared consciousness now. Fear that had not existed since before their exile. Fear planted by human weapons and human determination. Admiral Okonkwo looked at the enemy fleet. 2,000 ships. Each one had been grown from living tissue, shaped by millennia of evolution. Each one had been designed to destroy. His fleet had 3,000 ships, but many of them were council vessels, still learning to use their new weapons. This would not be easy. All ships, said Okonkwo. This is the Admiral. What we do today will determine the future of this galaxy. If we fail, civilization falls. If we succeed, we buy peace for 1,000 generations. He paused. I know many of you never expected to fight alongside humans. I know some of you still doubt us. That's fine. Doubt us all you want. Just point your weapons at the enemy and fire. Let history judge the rest. He took a breath. All batteries. Fire at will. The battle for the galaxy began. It lasted for 3 days. 3 days of constant fighting. 3 days of railgun fire and nuclear explosions and ships dying in the cold of space. 3 days of horror and courage and sacrifice beyond measure. Human ships led the charge, their primitive weapons tearing through Vorax hulls. Council ships followed, their retrofitted railguns adding to the destruction. Together, they pushed forward, system by system, sector by sector. The Vorax fought with desperate fury. They knew this was the end. They threw everything they had at the combined fleet. Plasma cannons, biological missiles, suicide runs by ships that had nothing left to lose. Ships died on both sides. Thousands of lives ended in fire and silence. The void filled with debris, the remains of vessels that had carried hopes and dreams and fears. But slowly, inevitably, the tide turned. Human weapons did not care about evolution. They did not care about adaptation. They simply delivered metal at incredible speeds, and metal tore through organic hulls no matter how many millennia of engineering had gone into them. On the third day, the last Vorax command ship exploded under concentrated railgun fire. The hive mind screamed one final time, a cry of rage and despair that echoed across the psychic spectrum. Then there was silence. The Vorax Dominion was no more. Admiral Okonkwo stood on his bridge, surrounded by the debris of battle. His fleet had lost 800 ships. Nearly 100,000 beings of various species had died. It was the greatest loss of life in galactic history, but they had won. Veltun stood beside him, his crystal body flickering with exhausted light. It is over, he said. After 10,000 years, it is finally over. Yes, said Okonkwo. It's over. 1 year later, Ambassador Elena Vasquez addressed the Galaxy Council for the final time. She was retiring from diplomatic service, returning to Earth to spend time with her family. But first, she had one last duty to perform. Honored delegates, she said. 1 year ago, humanity stood before this council as outsiders. You mocked our weapons. You dismissed our technology. You called us primitive. She smiled. You were not entirely wrong. We are primitive, in some ways. We still solve problems with force. We still build weapons that throw metal and create explosions. We never evolved beyond violence the way your species did. She paused, looking around the chamber at the delegates who had once laughed at her. But perhaps that is not entirely a bad thing. The universe is not always elegant. It does not always reward sophistication. Sometimes, it rewards the species that never forgot how to fight. Sometimes, it rewards the primitives. High Arbiter Veltun rose from his seat. In his crystalline hands, he held a single object. A human railgun slug, recovered from the Battle of Kethran. This object will be displayed in the Hall of Heroes, he said, alongside the greatest achievements of galactic civilization. It is not elegant. It is not sophisticated. It is a piece of metal. But this piece of metal, and others like it, saved everything we hold dear. He turned to Elena. We mocked your weapons as primitive. We were fools. You did not abandon kinetic weapons because you were less advanced. You kept them because you understood something we forgot. Sometimes, the simplest answer is the correct one. Sometimes, the universe does not require elegance. Sometimes, it requires a species willing to throw a rock very, very hard. Elena smiled. We've been throwing rocks for 2 million years. We've gotten pretty good at it. Laughter filled the chamber. But this time, it was not mocking. It was warm. It was respectful. It was the laughter of friends who had faced death together and survived. As Elena walked out of the Great Hall for the last time, she passed a group of young council species who were studying at the Diplomatic Academy. They stopped and stared at her with something like awe. "Is it true?" one of them asked. "Are humans really as dangerous as they say?" Elena considered the question. She thought about 2 million years of evolution. She thought about wars and weapons and the endless human capacity for violence. She thought about railgun slugs and nuclear missiles and the terrible efficiency with which her species could destroy. "Yes," she said finally. "We really are. But we're also loyal. We're also brave. And when our friends are in danger, there is nothing in this universe that can stop us from protecting them." She walked away, leaving the young aliens to wonder at the strange, primitive, terrifying species that had saved the galaxy by throwing rocks. And across the stars, a new saying spread among species who had once dismissed humanity: "Never mock a human's weapons. They have been killing each other since before they could speak, and they never stopped improving."